Did you know many companies close in their first 5 years due to a lack of financial management and failure to stick to their goals? Today, we'll tell the story of an entrepreneur who, on the brink of bankruptcy, discovered that success lies in what you aim for and how you make it happen. Get ready for information that can change your perspective. Now, listen to Tito's message.
Without excess. Always seek sobriety and naturalness. Artificiality not only distorts perception but also creates unnecessary strain on your team and resources. Be sober and authentic in everything, from your furnishings to your demeanor and your company's culture. If you try to show more than you really are, you end up getting lost in superficiality. Success is in what is genuine and well-founded. Today, we're going to explore how this truth transformed the life of one man and everyone around him. Stay with us, as Apollo will bring a story that proves, less is more, and the essential is invisible to the eyes.
Vitor, at 32 years old, was a successful entrepreneur, or so it seemed. His company, Woods & Dreams, specializing in custom-made furniture, was celebrating 9 years in the market, with 40 employees and a solid reputation built over the years. The numbers were, at first glance, in the right place: an enviable portfolio, loyal customers, and a growing presence on social media. However, what few knew was that, behind the scenes, there was a much more complex and distressing reality. The numbers, far from positive, were becoming a prison. The cash flow hadn't balanced for 2 years, and debts were accumulating every month. Suppliers were pressuring him, demanding overdue payments, and Vitor, stressed by the urgency of the situation, began paying salaries using personal loans, in an attempt to maintain appearances and ensure the company's stability. The weight of the financial crisis became a burden that was increasingly difficult to bear. But there was something even more devastating: the existential crisis. Vitor, the dreamer who started everything with a small woodworking shop, now saw himself as a figure distant from the person he was. Today, he's a man who looks in the mirror but doesn't recognize his own reflection. He was an actor on a stage that was falling apart. That man, who once breathed life and passion into his work, was now buried in uncertainty and pressure. Each day seemed like a burden, each decision a risky gamble. The constant pressure turned into sleepless nights and days that seemed to drag on. The breaking point came with a letter from the bank. His line of credit was cut, and Vitor was left with no possibility of credit to save the company. Without working capital, in debt up to his neck, he was faced with a dilemma: close the doors and admit defeat, or move forward with a radical and unguaranteed decision. It was then that he remembered his grandfather's words: "Son, when nothing is left, the truth is." He knew that, after so many years of pretense, he needed to face the harsh reality. There was no more room for disguises. If there was anything positive, it was the fact that he still had the essential: his team. Vitor decided he could no longer live in the shadow of appearances. He called a meeting with all the employees, without frills or empty motivational speeches. "We are sinking," he said, his voice faltering slightly, but firm. "But we're going to try one last move: cut everything that isn't essential." It wasn't just a catchy phrase. It was a risky proposal, an attempt to save what was left, focusing on what really mattered. The first cut was the most painful: the luxurious office in the city center. That space represented everything Vitor had achieved until then: sophistication, status, success. But he knew it no longer made sense. The company needed a radical reinvention. Vitor sold the designer furniture, the office was vacated, and in its place, he rented a small house next to his production warehouse, which was on the outskirts of the city. He took his team there and declared, "If we're going to sink, let's be together and with dignity." It was the beginning of a transformation not only financially, but also of his personal mindset and the company. What seemed like a difficult decision proved to be liberating. Vitor began to eliminate invisible costs, those expenses that went unnoticed but consumed resources in an unsustainable way. He canceled subscriptions to software he rarely used, eliminated expensive lunches with clients who brought no return, and even replaced the capsule coffee machine with a simple drip coffee pot. Each of those cuts represented an act of courage, but also of humility. He was willing to lose what seemed essential to save what truly mattered. The biggest challenge, however, wasn't financial. It was the cultural shift within the company. Vitor had to learn to take off his masks and admit his failures. He stopped pretending everything was okay and started listening to the truths of his employees. Transparency became a priority. And it was when he started listening that he discovered the invaluable worth of his team's ideas. Maria, from production, suggested creative ways to reduce waste. John from the warehouse, knew cheaper suppliers, and Anna from cleaning, revealed an unknown talent for sewing, offering the idea of creating a furniture line using fabric scraps. Each new idea brought a breath of hope and revealed the strength of the collective. However, there was still a persistent fear. Vitor worried that his vulnerability would be seen as a weakness, and that the transparency of his financial situation might drive customers even further away. But he knew that to survive, an even bolder step would be necessary, changing the way he viewed his own business. 8 months later, the company still wasn't making a profit, but at least it was breathing. The renewed breath didn't come from the financial results, but from the new culture of honesty and collaboration that was forming. Then, a new client asked Vitor to get involved in a social project, furnishing a neighborhood school with a very small budget. Although it was a contract that would likely bring no financial benefits, it had a great symbolic weight for Vitor. Accepting that project was for him an act of faith. He knew that by making the commitment, he was not only connecting with his company's mission, but also challenging himself to fulfill a promise of renewal. Vitor made a clear proposal to his employees regarding the needs: work on the weekend to fulfill the commitment and the delivery. Everyone accepted the additional workload. At the delivery, as the happy children embraced the furniture as if it were treasure, Vitor felt something transform within him. The last move wasn't about surviving, but about being reborn with a renewed purpose. He realized he was doing more than saving a company, he was rebuilding his own soul. A year and a half later, Woods & Dreams had not only paid off its debts but had also launched a line of sustainable furniture, made from reforested wood. The employees, who were once just collaborators, now became minority partners, sharing the profits and challenges of the company. Vitor no longer owned a luxury car or a facade of opulence, but he had gained something much more valuable: a team that believed in him, and a community that saw him as an example of resilience. Sobriety is not poverty, he told a local newspaper during an interview. It is freedom. The freedom to be who you are, without masks. Looking back, Vitor realized that the true transformation did not happen in his finances, but in his personal preparation. He finally understood that success does not depend only on external achievements but on the ability to deal with adversity, to listen to criticism, and to seek strength not only within himself but also in the divine guidance that accompanied him in every decision. The acceptance of criticism, which used to paralyze him, now became a tool for growth and evolution. He promised himself not to deviate from the company's real needs again.
We saw in the story Apollo told us that Vitor, enthusiastic about the development of his woodworking shop, dispersed his efforts into goals that were not the company's. We find guidance against waste in the Word, such as in Luke chapter 16, verse 10, "Whoever is faithful in little, is also faithful in much." This passage echoes Vitor's decision to start valuing the essential. Jesus teaches that integrity in small things prepares you for greater responsibilities. By cutting excesses, Vitor not only saved resources but proved that faithfulness to principles, even in difficult times, attracted unexpected blessings. The furnished school was the little that became much, a new market and a rebuilt reputation. We find in Proverbs chapter 11, verse 1, "The Lord detests dishonest scales, but accurate weights are his delight." The dishonesty here is not only financial but existential. When Vitor adjusted his scales by stopping his pretense of success, God honored his transparency, and the community responded reciprocally with loyalty. The accurate measure, in this case, was authenticity. In Matthew chapter 6, verses 19 to 21, "Do not store up for yourselves treasures on earth, but store up for yourselves treasures in heaven." Vitor exchanged his earthly treasure-like status and appearances for the celestial, which are good purposes and relationships with the neighborhood and with collaborators. The furniture for the school was his treasure in heaven, an investment in eternal values that yielded earthly fruits. Now, Apollo will lead us to reflect: how can we apply these lessons to our own crises? The answer may be closer than we imagine.
Vitor's story invites us to an uncomfortable question: how many masks do we wear daily? We live in an era that confuses success with visibility. But true prosperity, as we have seen in the scriptures, is born from integrity. Vitor didn't save his company alone, he allowed the truth to save him. By eliminating the artificial, he created space for the genuine: Maria's creativity, John's loyalty, the hope of the school children. This is sobriety in the courage to be sufficient. The biblical passages do not condemn wealth but the dishonesty that surrounds it. When Jesus talks about dishonest scales, he warns against the danger of measuring life by the standards of others. Vitor learned that much is not about having more, but about being more. And for you, what would be ideal to eliminate from your life to find the essential? We will continue to talk and improve in our meetings. In the description, you can find an interesting sociological approach to what was presented in this video. If this video resonated with you, help us carry this message forward. Don't forget to subscribe and hit the bell to not miss our weekly reflections. Your comments are our fuel. Share your own stories of sobriety and transformation. Together, we can build a community that values the genuine. Use this video to help someone who needs to hear these words. We're so glad you came here, so we can offer you another video that is now on screen. The idea is for us to improve introspection on the topic. Thank you again for being here and for being part of Thinking Strong. These paths will lead to the development and growth of our consciousness. Stay alert and dedicated like us, and we will see each other again soon.